Our panniers are built from the highest grade 2mm aluminium. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.
For this month's bike review, we are back at Barnstormer BMW, and we are back to a smaller bike. We're doing the G310 GS. Now, there's a bit of a thing here for me, and it's the fact that we have done some smaller bikes over the past 6 to 8 months, but this is a BMW. It's a GS. Now that brings with it, for me, a certain set of expectations around quality and the fact it's carrying that GS heritage, and it's got a hold to it for me. It's really got a hold to it.
The BMW blurb says, "A thirst for adventure, every day." And then they say, with the G310 GS, the adventures don't have to be big to be unforgettable. And that is the point, isn't it? They don't have to be big, and they don't have to be on big bikes. Although, it always helps if they look the part. And this little brother is a right corker. Put it this way, if the 310 and the Big Brother 1200 were starring in, say, the new Baywatch movie, they would without a shadow of doubt be Zac Efron and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You see what I mean? Little guy, big guy, both lookers. Maybe that's not an analogy I should share, but somehow Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy didn't quite work so well. But what the hell, you get what I mean. It's a good looking bike. And the specs make good reading as well. 34 horses from the 313cc single-cylinder engine, and pretty decent fuel consumption at a claimed 85 miles per gallon, which should in theory give you 200 miles tank range. That's pretty special from a small capacity adventure bike. But back to that engine. The cylinder is backward tilted, and the cylinder head rotated by 180 degrees. This configuration lends itself to a lower centre of gravity and gets more weight toward the front wheel. It has a similar frame to the 310R, but the suspension has extra travel, an added 1.6 inches up front and an extra 1.9 on the back, with a total of 7.1 inches at each end. The rear shock is also adjustable for spring preload.
I said right at the start of this bike review, this motorbike has to represent BMW and GS. It has those things that it must symbolise. And so far, I believe it does. It looks like a little GS. Absolutely just represents it. It's got everything about it in terms of the look. And the engine, now accepting that it is pretty much 1/4 of the size of the big GS, it's a 300 versus a 1200. It is possibly, no, I think definitely the smoothest single cylinder engine I've ever ridden. I'm kind of really rather blown away by it.
was just a shame that we didn't have the opportunity to ride off-road and test out how much difference all these things actually made. But, from everything else we've heard, it is a bit of a cracker off-road. There was a bit of me that was expecting the tilted back cylinder to be really tilted back, like sat back in a reclining chair type tilted. But at a quick glance, you'd probably not even notice it unless you'd been told about it. In some ways, it surprised me that BMW has taken this long to get around to a small capacity adventure bike. The strength of the GS brand is second to none across the globe. And in my mind, there's always been a space for a little brother in the family. Something more accessible that appeals to as wide an audience as possible and that will get riders inducted into the arms of the GS faithful. Well, it's here. Just one little word of warning. For all that it starts at a very reasonable 5,100 quid, its handsome looks and its great engine performance, it's just a little bit on the teeny weeny side.
I asked a question a little bit earlier about whether this bike represents what I think a BMW should mean in terms of its quality, and does it embody the GS name? Well, everything about the bike that I've seen and looked at today absolutely embodies that quality. And in terms of being the GS, does it embody what I expect a GS to? Yeah, from the moment you set eyes on it, you go, that is unmistakably a GS. And yes, okay, the engine's a lot smaller, but it's a real gem. And as I said, probably the best single, I think, or certainly the smoothest single I've ever ridden. And for me, the GS is about adventure, and this bike absolutely is that. And I think on this capacity bike, it would be the one that I would choose to take on an adventure, which I suppose kind of answers the question, would I have one in my garage? If I was a little bit shorter, 100% I would, because I think it's a fantastic bike.
Our lids open away from the bike, so they can be opened fully without interference, and they create a useful working area. Metal Mule, engineered to be different. Proud sponsors of the bike reviews on Adventure Bike TV.